Off the press of the Autumn Statement 2016, we're delighted to bring you industry reaction, and I'm joined now by Stephen Johnson, MD of Shawbrook Bank. And Stephen, I think landlords were sort of keeping their fingers crossed that there may be a softening in attitude towards landlords and there may be some changes around Section 24, but sadly we were disappointed. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I think it's a shame there's no reflection on Section 24 and its retrospective nature for landlords. I think that's the key aspect, and I think if it was to be introduced going forward, for new investments, and I think people can make their decisions based upon the known tax environment, and it is the retrospective nature, which I do think will put a number of landlords under some financial pressure as we move forward and as the tapering kicks in. So it's a shame that they perhaps not reflected on that. Probably not unsurprising, and probably signposted that it probably was not going to be reviewed, but still probably a missed opportunity.
And nothing on stamp duty either. There was a lot of pressure on the government about the stamp duty surcharge, on a lot of wish lists of the industry that would be abolished, but no, George Osborne and Osborne-itis continues.
Yeah, again, I think probably not unsurprising, but again, probably slightly disappointing. Clearly, it has had an impact on transaction activities at different parts of the market. And, I guess it's quite soon to perhaps reflect on it after they've just introduced it quite recently. So maybe the position will soften after some time, but clearly the problem with the economy and the lowering of growth has created an increased deficit. So I guess the ability to reflect on some of these additional taxes is limited. But yeah, it's again probably another slightly missed opportunity.
So one of the things that did come out was this ban on lettings agent fees, which is quite strange because the Housing Minister Gavin Barwell previously tweeted in September that there would be no ban on lettings agent fees. He didn't see that as a way forwards, but it was announced today that it's going into consultation, and again, uncertainty because they don't say when.
Yeah, so absolutely. So where does that leave the market? Where does that leave landlords? I think when you look at some of the stories about disparity in fees, then clearly you can see why it's quite a populist sort of move. And if it helps sort of support the private rented sector with kind of helping tenants, then that's probably a good thing for the private rented sector, but actually you've got to work through the consequences. So, what does that mean for landlords? Does that mean they're going to get a poorer quality tenant that they're taking on board? Will that manifest itself in poor performance? Will that manifest it in arrears? Will the landlords have more costs? Will they be able to absorb those costs, or will they look to pass those on themselves? So I think it's just thinking through the consequences. But I guess when you see the range of fees that some people have paid, you can probably see why it's attracted attention, and clearly it'll be a popular policy with renters. I guess slightly offsetting the negative impact of Section 24, which has probably impacted the rents that they've been paying. So slightly inconsistent with that, I guess.
Well, it's also going to have an impact on the lettings industry, and it may push landlords to going towards self-managing. And as you said, that does expose less experienced landlords, perhaps to tenants that will feel that there's no barrier to applying for a property because there are no fees involved.
Yeah, so I think that's that's definitely a risk that creates. I guess it'll also probably put some pressure on the business model of letting agents between maybe high street orientated models and online models that have got lower cost. So you may see a shift to more sort of virtual letting agents to do the work on a cheaper basis. The market will obviously adapt to it, but clearly, I think the consequences need to be thought through, and you can see ultimately that landlords facing increased costs on the back of it ultimately. But if it helps kind of confidence in the private rented sector, if it actually supports the tenant community, then I guess there is some upside to PRS. It's just thinking through where the cost ends up lying.
Indeed. And I think it's interesting that one of the main features of the statement was increased house building.
Yep.
So government has recognised that this is falling behind their targets.
Yeah, I think that's to be welcomed, and I think there will be focus on the housing market and the shortage of housing. I mean, but even so, the fund will produce 100,000 houses, I think, from the sort of headlines that I've seen so far. Even so, that still takes us away from our annual shortfall, let alone the legacy shortfall. So we've still got a chronic mismatch between supply and demand, which under floor put a floor under sort of rent and tenant demand anyway. But I think it's encouraging that the government has started to think like that. You've also seen some more investment into social housing and housing associations. So I think they're all to be applauded as initiatives on their own. That they're not going to make, I think, enormous inroads into the structural problems we have with housing in the UK. and the affordability challenge that homeowners have got.
There was also some mention of increased infrastructure and investment in transport links, and this is all relevant to landlords because where there are improved transport links, then there are going to be, heightened tenant demand, and it's quite a good idea for landlords to include in their research where new links are going because it could signal opportunity as a forthcoming kind of property hotspot.
Yeah, I think that's been well proven, hasn't it? I mean, it's been well trialled. Things like the Crossrail, East-West, North-South, and high-speed rail networks. I think those big infrastructure projects, absolutely, and also given the affordability challenge on home ownership, but also rents nearer to the London area. The quicker the commute to the infrastructure will encourage that sprawl even further. So in that context, absolutely, I think it's well proven to support investment strategies, and I'm sure people will be looking at that.
So just to finish then, it was Philip Hammond's first autumn statement, but actually also his last, which is kind of strange because they're changing the frequency and the format. To summarise, how would you sum up today's events?
I guess it was all pretty well signposted. I think there wasn't much room for him to do too much, given I think maybe where the economic kind of forecasts now lie with the Brexit on our horizon. So he's probably fairly limited what he could do. I think it's a shame that they didn't perhaps reflect on the fairness of some of the Section 24 liabilities. I do think that is a shame and a missed opportunity. Perhaps they'll come back and reflect on that going forward. But probably quite a modest and low-key affair, really, but probably not surprising.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much to Shawbrook Bank for hosting us here. We've been reporting live from the autumn statement, actually at Shawbrook headquarters. And thank you very much to Stephen for giving his input and his reaction to what's gone on today. Hope you've got value from it.